My sister uttered these cruel words about our elderly mother. Old people without money are just in the way. How could she say such cold things to her own mother? Anger trembled through me. I wasn't interested in Dad's inheritance or anything like that, so I could bear it, but it still upset me deeply. Then, shockingly, my sister and her husband kicked our mother out of the house. I glared at them, but they only smiled smugly, impervious to my protests. As I struggled with what to do next, Mom quietly said, "It's all right," and left the room. Bewildered, I followed her. After walking a distance from the house, she stopped, chuckled, and cheerfully remarked, "Those two are done for now." Perplexed, I asked, "What do you mean?" "My name is Kate. I'm 52 years old. I have never married, but I have no regrets about that. I've worked full-time at a local company, ensuring a stable life for my old age. My mother, Tiffany, is 79 years old. She and my father were known as a loving couple in our neighborhood until he passed away at 89. After his death, my sister Sarah became fixated on his inheritance. Sarah has a grown son who's known for causing trouble, and her husband is quite a character. Money-hungry and pretentious, always preaching that material possessions define one's worth. Their reckless spending habits constantly leave them short on cash, a troublesome pair indeed. Sarah has always been greedy and showy. I recall how, in high school, she would pester our mother for the latest fads. When Mom refused, Sarah resorted to stealing money from her purse. At first, Mom couldn't believe it. She noticed funds disappearing without her knowledge and decided to set a trap, leaving her wallet on the desk and observing from a hidden spot. As expected, Sarah took the money. Mom confronted her immediately, but Sarah shamelessly shouted, "It wasn't me. This is the first time. It's always Kate who does it." Furious, Mom scolded her but seemed relieved that Sarah hadn't stolen from someone else. My sister's husband shared the same mentality, maintaining appearances while their finances dwindled. They seemed eager to shower their son with money. It came to light that my sister and her husband repeatedly approached our parents, asking for financial support. They pressured them, saying, "We want to give our son a proper education. These days, tutoring is essential. Consider it an investment. Can't you spare $50 a month? If you don't help, don't expect us to care for you in your old age. Think of it as securing your future. Give our eldest son more now, and you won't have to worry about your later years." Our parents never intended to depend on anyone for their care, but they fretted about my future. "We're fine, but what about Kate?" My sister and her husband's eyes gleamed as if they found their prey. "Exactly, we can frame it as for Kate. Our eldest son will look after Kate in her old age. If you view it as an investment in our son, surely $50 or $90 isn't too much." Using the guise of care as a shield, they managed to extract a significant sum from our parents. So they continued to deplete our parents' finances. Mom and Dad lived frugally on their pensions, making their lives undoubtedly challenging. Then, their grandson secured a job and moved out of state. I feared he might never return, leaving our parents' financial support in vain. Discussions about tuition ceased, replaced by requests for money to cover their own living expenses. Our son has grown up and moved away, but his education drained us financially. "Can't you continue helping us? The usual $90 will suffice. Kate is unmarried and unreliable. It's always better to have a man around." "Don't worry, Dad. If anything happens, we'll be there in a heartbeat." Our parents realized they were being financially drained, but they felt powerless against my sister and her husband's persuasive arguments. They were skilled at painting their requests as investments for emergencies, even pledging to look after me. Then our father passed away. It might have been the stress. He had become a mere shadow of his former self, his health visibly deteriorating. When my sister and her husband notified us of Dad's death, her first question was, "What about the inheritance?" It was sadly characteristic of my sister to prioritize that over everything else. Inheritance. "Dad just passed away. This isn't the time for that." I tried to interject, but my sister cut me off. "I'll be there soon." "Mom's already there, isn't she?" I was horrified by my sister and her husband. Money seemed to be their sole concern. Even before the funeral ended, she began probing about the inheritance. Turning to Mom, she remarked, "Mom, you're not going to take everything in the inheritance, are you? You'll need care soon. Care requires money and strength, and you know a woman's strength alone isn't enough for that, right?" I struggled to grasp her words. Consider this. Would any mother-in-law feel comfortable revealing her vulnerabilities to a son-in-law she hardly knows? It felt like my sister was simply trying to pressure Mom, intimidate her, and lay claim to the inheritance. And what about Kate? What will become of her if she's left alone? Don't sisters need to support each other sometimes, Mom? You wouldn't want Kate to face a solitary life, would you? How could someone be so consumed by greed? I struggled to even consider her my sister anymore. I anxiously awaited Mom's response to her audacious demand for the inheritance. Mom calmly replied, "All right, I understand. I may need your husband's support in the future, so I'll waive my claim to Dad's inheritance. Is that acceptable?" But it wasn't. I attempted to intervene. "Mom, can we really trust her to honor her word?" Mom motioned for me to remain silent and then turned to me, saying, "Listen to Sarah. You should relinquish the inheritance as well." "All right," Mom insisted firmly, leaving me no choice but to agree. The process of renunciation turned out to be more complex than anticipated, taking several days to complete. Throughout, my sister persistently called, demanding updates. "How's the renunciation going? Hurry up. Is Mom finished yet? Let me know when it's done." Despite my sister's relentless pressure driven by greed, I remained committed to honoring Mom's wishes and continued with the process. Once the renunciation was finalized, we invited my sister and her husband over. Mom announced that we had both relinquished our claims. My sister and her husband exchanged triumphant glances. Gazing at our elderly mother, my sister remarked with a cold smirk, "Old people without money are just a burden." I was stunned, struggling to grasp her words. "What? What did you say?" I demanded, hoping I had misheard. My sister chuckled callously. "I said old people without money are just a burden. You're useless now, Mom. Get it? This house belongs to us now. It's mine, and there's someone here who isn't welcome to stay." How could anyone say such cruel things to their own mother? It's unbelievable, right? Mom's continued presence in our house now seemed odd to my sister. "If you want to stay, you'll need to pay rent and cover living expenses. Is that acceptable?" Of course, it wasn't acceptable. This house held deep sentimental value for Mom, and she couldn't simply leave at their command. Yet after announcing the renunciation of the inheritance, they were already trying to evict the rightful occupants. It was unforgivable, even though we had signed away everything. Mom trembled as she replied, "It's all right, I'll leave. Everything in this house belongs to you now. Do as you wish with it all. I'll take only this small bag. I won't be returning to this house. Goodbye." My sister and her husband smirked maliciously. Fuming with anger, I accompanied Mom as she left. I felt somewhat bewildered as we departed. Even as we walked away, my sister and her husband made no attempt to follow. When we had put enough distance between us and the house, Mom suddenly stopped and burst into triumphant laughter. Why was she laughing? Had she lost her mind? It wasn't surprising, considering she had been manipulated by her own daughter and had now lost her home. Then Mom uttered, "Those two are done for now," with an almost cheerful tone. Confused, I could only manage to ask, "What do you mean?" "I moved out when I started working. By the time I turned 35, I had purchased the condominium. I never thought I'd marry. Where else would Mom go? I couldn't leave her alone, so I brought her to live with me." She repeatedly said, "Thank you. I'm sorry," not out of sorrow, but from a sense of guilt towards me. I knew she must have been deeply hurt. I resolved to live happily with her from then on. Once settled in the condo, Mom began to open up. I wonder why sisters can turn out so differently. I always knew she was greedy, but to this extent. How much money will ever satisfy her? I've contributed approximately $110,000 each year for 15 years towards her son's education. That's a total of $1,650,000. We never really expected any care in return. Was it all for my sake? Mom nodded with a hint of guilt. It seemed she had been contemplating my future, worrying that I might end up alone. I'm certain now that my sister and her husband never had any intention of caring for her parents or me. Despite Mom holding on to hope for Sarah, I doubt they ever had any plans for caregiving. Fortunately, Dad didn't require much care before he passed. It must have suited Sarah well. Mom smiled again, leaving me puzzled about its meaning. Yes, it's clear now. She's content with Dad's inheritance. But she was somewhat naive, I believe. Naive? I inquired. Mom didn't explicitly state it. "You're a kind-hearted child," she murmured softly. Silence settled between us once more. Then she asked, "Did you have expectations regarding the inheritance?" "I never relied on it. I didn't care for Dad expecting inheritance. Mom and I were the ones who tended to him, albeit briefly. My sister insisted on male assistance for bathing and toileting, but Mom and I managed his care. I nursed him solely out of gratitude, with no expectation in return. And I planned to do the same for Mom, without my sister's involvement. It was all out of genuine love for them. Mom, why don't you come live here? I've been feeling lonely anyway, I suggested. Mom's eyes welled with tears this time. She thanked me repeatedly before saying something cryptic. Just give it a few months. I can't explain now, but I promise to tell you everything later. You don't need to suffer or be sad anymore. We can undo what's been done. Can you wait until then without asking questions? I was puzzled but sensed Mom had something on her mind, perhaps about my sister or the inheritance. For now, I agreed silently. Mom's face lit up with a youthful smile. I wondered about her mention of a few months, but I knew better than to press if she wasn't ready to share. I made a conscious effort to put my sister out of my mind completely. We decided to try a weekday hula dance class. How does this outfit look for Tuesday? Mom asked, a mix of embarrassment and happiness evident in her expression. I wanted Mom to enjoy as many moments of joy as possible while she still could. Gradually, she began to relax more and smile more often. After a few months had passed, I had nearly forgotten about our waiting period. Mom, however, remembered clearly and seemed cheerful that morning. It's been a few months indeed, and they've changed our lives, she remarked. Is that what you meant? Then Mom revealed something startling. After a certain period, you can no longer renounce your inheritance. Renounce the inheritance. What does that mean? I was taken aback. Mom and I had already relinquished our claim to the property. Why would renunciation come up again? We've already renounced our inheritance, haven't we? This isn't about us. It's about Sarah. I was bewildered. Why would Sarah renounce the inheritance? Mom chuckled triumphantly. Because there was no inheritance, only debts. That couple inherited nothing but debt. What a twist of fate. Dad didn't own any property, just liabilities. Mom and I had renounced any claim, so we escaped the debt. Meanwhile, my sister and her husband inherited not property, but debts. I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you more, but I was afraid it would hurt you if you knew the truth. And perhaps you would have told Sarah. I wanted to shoulder the blame alone, so I kept it from you, Mom confessed. I was stunned. Mom had patiently waited for her moment, keeping this revelation to herself. She had anticipated that if I knew about my sister inheriting the debt, I might inadvertently inform her, so she kept it secret. This plan was actually Dad's idea. He gradually transferred his savings into my bank account. He deliberately incurred some debt, but it was strategic, Mom explained. He purchased several plots of land in remote areas, some needing immediate repairs, with the intention for Sarah to inherit it all. Mom revealed they had retained some savings to avoid suspicion from my sister, but ultimately, it resulted in a $200,000 debt. Did you know you can't inherit savings without also inheriting the debt? It's either accept everything or renounce it all. What foolish children, Mom remarked, almost gleeful at Dad's scheme. Witnessing Mom's determination, I understood the depth of her disdain for my sister. Mom, perhaps I would have told Sarah if I had known earlier. But now, considering her predicament, I can't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. I suppose I felt that anger too, I admitted. My sister and her husband were left with a $200,000 debt. Some properties required immediate repairs, adding to their financial burden. The window for renouncing the inheritance had passed, leaving them no option to opt out now. Blinded by the allure of $100,000, they had ended up with a substantial debt. They might soon sell their rural properties, likely fetching far less than what they paid. Their marriage could even suffer due to the financial strain. Eventually, my sister realized the gravity of the situation and called me in panic. Help me, the debt is overwhelming, she pleaded. It's infuriating. Mom, you knew this, didn't you? You're partly to blame. Pay off my debt now. We're family. Her selfishness left me astounded. Inheriting means taking on the debt too. I didn't know that. I only wanted the property, not the debt. You take it, you can have the debt, she yelled angrily with the phone. Her demands were irrational and selfish. She insisted, you should inherit the debt as a family. Cancel the renunciation. Her words were nonsensical and unreasonable. I'm hanging up now. Maybe you should discuss this with your own family, your husband and son, though I can guess what they'll think of you. I ended the call, feeling a sense of clarity and relief for the first time in a while. I had anticipated my sister and her husband might divorce. Indeed, my sister ended up getting divorced, but it was her husband who initiated it. As I suspected, he was driven by greed and likely saw no benefit in remaining married to someone burdened with debt. However, they couldn't divorce immediately with a sudden $200,000 debt hanging over them. They needed to settle everything before proceeding with the divorce. The house they lived in was sold. My sister and her husband, who always relied on our parents' money, never saved anything. Banking on Dad's inheritance, they probably won't be able to clear the debt. What lies ahead for my sister is the daunting task of working diligently to pay it off. She insists she won't divorce, though it seems less about love for her husband and more about not wanting him to escape the debt and leave her alone. It's exactly the kind of mindset my sister would have. It's almost pitiful. Meanwhile, I continue to reside in the condo with Mom. It turns out Mom had transferred money into her own bank account and isn't facing financial struggles. She gives me around $70 each month for expenses. I've tried to decline it numerous times, but Mom insists, vowing to continue until I accept. Reluctantly, I've started accepting the $70. Despite receiving this money, I'm not spending it recklessly. You never know when Mom or I might need it, so I'm saving diligently. The hula dancing we started as a mother-daughter activity turned out to be surprisingly enjoyable. Most importantly, seeing Mom laugh and relish herself makes me realize that life